Hi, I'm Macy.
And I'm Missy.
We're best friends
and business partners. And each week, we're going to bring you a quote that inspires us, and we're going to talk about it.
Join us as we break down our favorite impactful messages for leadership and share how you can apply them to lead with confidence and purpose.
Get ready for a fun and authentic journey into leadership, life, and everything in between.
Hey, bestie.
Hey, bestie.
Happy podcast day.
Same to you. Happy podcast day.
Thank you. This week is going to be a great week. We have got a great quote from one of our favorites, Anon.
Yes, Anon. And we have a really great guest.
I know we do. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. She is amazing. She is just such a special person, a great leader, a great friend. And I know our listeners are going to love her from the moment they hear from her.
I'm excited to learn from her. So, Miss,
Me
why don't
too.
you go ahead? Yeah, why don't you go ahead, introduce this week's guest, and then we'll introduce the quote that we're going to talk about.
That sounds great. Well, listeners, our guest today is Amanda Thompson. I have known Amanda for over a decade, Amanda. And from the first moment I met you, you were an incredible communicator, a connector, and a leader and a mentor to all who knew you. So I couldn't be more excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell our listeners what you're doing, what you do. You've got a huge career resume and are doing amazing things. So welcome and tell everyone about yourself.
I love it. Well, thank you. I cannot believe we've known each other for a decade. Like when you say that out loud, it kind of makes me pause because I feel like we've been friends forever in one side of the coin. And I feel like I've just started to get to know you on the other side.
I know. Mayce and I say the same thing.
We're not old enough to know each other for decades, right? I mean, that's not how this works.
Yes, that is not how this works. But anyhow, I'm so happy to be here with the both of you. I admire both of you so much and appreciate that you've had me as one of your guests. And I'm excited to share, some insights today with your listeners. And, for me, you said I'm a doer. I would say that's probably the perfect description of me. I'm a doer. I love to do a lot of things. I love to try a lot of things. I never have just one thing going on at a time. In my full-time world, I lead marketing strategy for a tech firm, a very big full-time job. I also own and formulated my own skincare business that I run as well called Kickpeach Beauty. And I'm constantly doing additional things, thought leadership, developing new business models. I always kind of joke, like I literally am a doer. I'm a multitasker doer of things, particularly business. I love to be able to build businesses.
Well, it's no wonder you guys are friends. I mean, I always feel like I have a lot of spinning plates, but the two of you, you're like masters at the plate spinning.
You see why we kicked it off, huh, Macy?
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's why Amanda could come sit by us anytime.
That's right. That's right. Well, Amanda, we are so glad you're here, and we're excited to talk about a special quote with you. So let's share the quote today with all of our listeners. It's a great one, and it is, "Vision gets the dream started, but execution turns the dream into reality."
Ooh, that is good.
It really is so good. So, Amanda, let's start with you. What comes to mind when you hear that quote?
I think reality, because it's really easy to dream. In fact, dreaming is such a fun part of building businesses, setting goals for yourself. And I think when you start to then meet execution, that's where you start to put it into motion. That's where you experience the journey. That's where you experience the outcome. And Missy, I think of a moment that we actually shared together, but in very different circumstances. And that was when you came to New York to cheer me on when I ran the New York City Marathon.
Yes, that was so much fun. And you were amazing.
Thank you. And that had been a dream of mine for a long time. In fact, I had entered that race for 5 years. I didn't get in. I finally got in 1 year and I was so excited. It had just been such a vision. And then the execution plan of, you actually have to train for the marathon starts to kick in. And that was, again, I think what makes that such a fulfilling quote for me is that the execution, when you cross that finish line, and you might have multiple finish lines, a marathon obviously has a big finish line, you see the dream and the execution come together and it's a celebration and it's just amazing.
And that's so interesting, actually, Amanda, because you don't always see when you have the vision and you execute, you don't always get to a finish line. You don't
Most
always
often you
get
don't.
to a
Yeah, to the
celebration.
celebration. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we always encourage people celebrate along the way, but
Yep.
with something like a marathon or a game or something like that, there is a finite, you are done,
Yeah.
right? You've gotten to the finish line. I love that.
I love it too. And I love a celebration. You girls know I do. And here's the thing. As leaders, it's not enough just to dream big or have incredible ideas. It's what you said, Amanda. Once we have that big idea, we have to take action to bring
Yeah.
those dreams to life. So a vision can inspire and set the direction, but without execution, it just remains that, just a dream.
Yeah. I mean, I think about some of the greatest leaders that we admire, Miss, but also Amanda, I'm sure you can think of great leaders in your life that they're not just visionaries. They're exactly what we said about you, right? They're doers. They don't just dream about a better future. They're rolling up their sleeves. They're getting in there. They're creating that future. They're building. They're bridging the gap between the idea and the action. I mean, if you think about it, if there were people that never had great idea or people that have great ideas that never took action, I feel like it's like the sound that I think there's a song like Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Like they get started, but they don't ever do anything.
I don't know that song, but I don't know what's worse than that, right? Like, what's worse, to never have had a dream or to never take action on that dream?
I mean, I think it's to never take action. I mean, I don't know that you'd ever know what could have been. I mean, if you don't have a dream, you don't know, right?
Right.
But if you don't take action on a dream, you'll never know what could have been. I think that's worse.
So true.
Yep.
Okay, Amanda. So you've had such a varied leadership career. Can you give us an example of a time where you had a vision that you needed a team to get behind it, to execute it? And how did you do that? Like, what steps did you take to get others on board with your vision or the company's vision?
That's a good question.
It's a really good question. And, as I think of that question now, there's lots of examples that I've had across different things, but I think probably the first example that I think of is when I was first leading teams of people. And this was when I was leading talent acquisition. I was working for a telecommunications company. And what we did is I staffed all of our contact centers. Now, shout out to any of you who've ever worked in a contact center, and advice to anybody who's listening, be nice to those people. Like, they literally have the hardest job in the world. It's a very heavily metriced environment. They're managed on how fast they answer a call, how quickly they solve something. They have to know everything about every policy, everything that ever happened in the company's history, and they have to be able to do that in the blink of a second. So be nice to those people. But basically, when you think of that, as you can imagine, they're not also high-paying jobs. So if you're always just taking customer complaints all day long, and that's what you do every day, it's a job that has very high attrition, typically upwards of 200%. So like, just
Wow.
what that meant for my team is, in some of our centers, if we had 1,000 people in a contact center, we were filling that contact center 1 or 2 times per year. So that put a lot of pressure on my talent acquisition team. And when I came into this role, our company was going through some very different changes. We had a lot of legacy employees, kind of old mindset, if you will, which I think is very common.
Yeah.
And my team that I inherited as part of this position was not performing well. In fact, I was probably going to have to performance manage some of them out. And that is never a fun conversation as a leader, especially when you're new to managing people. It's like, oh, that's a tough place. But what I wanted to do was really give this team a chance. And so I brought everybody together. We talked a little bit about the company's vision, where we were going. But what was really, I think, iconic for me at this young stage of leading people is, I think that what I did was just simply communicate to them what was ahead of us. Then we talked about obstacles and headwinds. I like that word, headwinds versus obstacles, that they were facing. We then walked through what I call the art of the possible, like what could we do? How could we solve the problems? And because it was not me telling them what we were doing, they were co-creating it with me. They were excited. And then really the aha for me was creating that connected value, because we all had a plan, but then I really connected it to exactly how they got paid. And for the way that they were bonused, it was based on filling certain seats at the start time and the impact of revenue that had on the company. And it was like, it just mentally flipped a switch with this kind of old mindset team. It was like all of a sudden they felt empowered. They felt like, hey, why I do what I do every single day matters.
Yes.
It matters to the company. It matters to my family. I can actually see a financial, tangible benefit, but I also see the skills I'm building along the way. And what was awesome about that experience is within 90 days, that team went from performing at about 50 to 60% to actually overperforming, that they were not cutting, we were not hiring classes as much. And that pattern stayed with that team for the entire time we were there. And it was
amazing.
Amazing. And they've all gone on to be great leaders, kind of using that same strategy.
But the bottom line of what you said, Amanda, is you connected with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
You connected with them in a way that they got it.
Right.
And
it was important
Mayce,
to them.
Yes. You and I often talk when we train organizations, the concept that people aren't going to buy into your vision unless they bought into you. Right. And so what Amanda did was she got in there with them. She shared her vision, but she did it in a way that she connected it to them and to what the outcome would be for them. And your ideas might be amazing, but without your team's support and them buying into you, like Amanda, you just shared that group did, you're not going to be able to execute. And that's such a great example of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think besides connection, Amanda, how else can leaders get buy-in from their people? Like if someone's listening and they're like, I want to have an experience that Amanda had, I want to turn this
Turn
script,
this
right?
ship
I want
around.
to, I want to make sure that our team is overperforming so I don't have to hire new classes. Like, what are some practical things that leaders can do to get buy-in?
Yeah, for me, and this has just worked for me in my entrepreneurial endeavors, my corporate employment endeavors, my marriage, is raising kids. Like it really is a life skill. And I think it's really about creating that joint shared value together.
That's so good.
And it's whenever something's happening and somebody's either underperforming or an organization, nobody wakes up every day and wants to underperform at their job, right?
Sure.
No one. There's literally not one person who says, I really want to go to work today and be the worst at this job.
Right.
So I think many people get frustrated. I think they don't ever feel like they're heard. And so what ends up happening is they've got all this like pent up frustration, and they oftentimes haven't had a place where they've been able to vent that and vent it in a healthy way. So I think the first thing of being able to establish connection is to really let your team talk in a safe environment. Let them tell you what true headwinds they're facing. Don't solve it for them. Just literally just get together and write down all the headwinds that they're navigating. What's hard, what's frustrating, what's making them mad. Put it out on paper. Give space to let them feel that for a second. And then shift into the art of the possible. And if you're not familiar with that saying, it's been a kind of a guidepost for me of, what can I do about this situation? Can I change certain things? If you can't change anything, what could you do differently within it? And I have found that just by doing that, you move out of the state of kind of negative Nancy, which I think when people are underperforming, they can almost kind of get into negative Nancy, and they can circumvent accountability. And so now they kind of can quickly move into that victim component of the communications part of their brain. But when they feel heard and they're invited to then actually solve the problem, they actually feel like they're creating their own future. And I've just really found that it's a super simple strategy that invites them into the process, and then allow them to connect to something in that process that's for them. Is this going to give them more time back in their day? Is this going to allow them to get to their children's sporting event and cut out a little bit early? Is this going to give them a financial bonus? Not everybody's motivated by the same thing. So
yes,
right.
I think it's imperative as a leader that if you're really trying to get your team to make a vision happen, they have to be bought into what they're facing in reality. They have to know what's in it for them, and they have to know how what they do creates impact for the entire team.
Yeah, I love there's two things that
So
you said that
good.
stood out to me the most. I think one is the role of the role in the goal. What is my role
Yeah.
personally in the goal for the entire organization? And then I love that idea of the art of the possible. Is that a book? It sounds like it should be a book.
I know it
I,
does.
I think it probably is. If it isn't, like
If
immediately
it isn't,
go.
Amanda, you need to write it because
Maybe I should. Maybe
yeah,
I should.
I
Go
love
right
how
now and get the
yeah,
copyright,
I
Amanda.
like how it sounds, right?
Yeah.
The art of the possible, because it is an art. Like you've got to figure it out. What is possible? What's possible that I can control and what's possible that I can't control? But what you also said is if you can't control it, really, how can I control my thoughts or my actions based on the results that I want because I can't control the situation?
Right.
That's
Right.
right.
So
There's
good. Yeah,
always a possibility, even in things that you can't control. There's a possibility, and
Yeah, I love
there's
it.
possible components. So I
Well,
also
I'm
like
just
role and goal.
I'm just saying that possibilities is my word of the year. And so
There
I
you
am
go.
really loving that. And I just see us, Macy, somehow working in the art of possibility into our training. So
Yeah, I think
I
it's gonna
love
be
that.
cool.
Okay. So
So if you don't write the book, Amanda, we're stealing it. We're gonna write
You can still do it. You can still do it.
All right. So as we're thinking about this quote, vision gets the dream started, but execution turns the dream into reality. It made me think that people generally fall into two categories. And we actually talked about both of them in isolated ways. But really, when it comes to that, don't you think we have dreamers and doers?
Yes. And
Yes.
both of them, right, are important. I think there's a distinction, but here's what I think on the dreamer part. The dreamers are the visionaries, right? They're the ones who they see the possibilities, they have the ideas, they really do imagine what the future could look like. I think, Missy, you're a dreamer. My husband is definitely a dreamer. And the reason I say that is because I do believe that dreamers inspire other people to think beyond their limitations, and they help them envision things that are greater than what's going on right now, which sometimes, admittedly, I'll get stuck there, right? I get stuck in the what's going on right now. I have a hard time thinking beyond the limitations. But without action, then ideas just remain that, right? They're just that dream that will never happen. So I think it's easy sometimes for dreamers to get stuck in the what if phase, like the what ifing themselves in the negative. What if it doesn't work out? What if it's bad? La 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 la. But they want to refine that vision so much that sometimes dreamers don't take action because they wait for that perfection.
I agree. And Amanda, at the first of the podcast, when you said something about being a doer, you are a doer. You're an action taker. I think I am too. But I would have said at the very beginning, like you're a dreamer.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
right. Because you've got these great big ideas and dreams, and doers, are the implementers. So you've got to have both for that dream to move forward. You've got to take the vision and put it into motion. You've got to focus on execution and bringing those tangible ideas into tangible outcomes. And doers may not be the ones that have all the grand ideas that the dreamers have, but they take those practical steps and they, make progress and they adjust. And I think doers also understand that momentum is more powerful than you might say perfection. But Amanda, talk about that, because you said you were a doer, but I saw you as a dreamer. But yes, I know you're an action taker, as am I. So speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say I'm a dreamer. I love big ideas, but I wouldn't put myself in the dreamer category, because when I think of the dreamer, I often think of people. Interestingly, I think about my former husband. I had a very short practice marriage right out of college, and what I
practice
love
marriage. She said, "I love that, a practice marriage."
Well, it was. And my former husband is an amazing person, but he was a dreamer. He had all of these ideas and he would talk about these ideas and they were fascinating. He was fascinating to listen to, but he would never do anything with them. And so he'd have all of these things that I was like, those are all amazing. Do one of them. And he would never get off the mark for those. And so I think that I have a unique blend of like, I love to dream. There's actually nothing I love more than thinking about the art of the possible and possibilities and dreaming big. But I think the difference for me is there will always be more great ideas than there's capacity to execute. So I like to kind of prioritize those dreams and say,
Yeah.
I got to go do one of those because the whole goal of like dreaming is to actually go do it and
I love that.
Not to come to the end, but like to actually go do it, even if it fails miserably.
Yes.
Do it. So that's why I would put myself in a doer category.
But here's the thing. I mean, leaders have to be both. Like at the end of the day,
100%.
that's the reality, right? You have to be a dreamer because you have to set the vision. You have to inspire people.
You have to see it to achieve it. Yeah.
But then just like Amanda said, like the point of a dream is to do it. Like you don't just want to have your head in the clouds and have all these dreams and then wake up one day and be like, I had some really great ideas that I never executed on. So the perfect mix is to be a dreamer, have the vision, inspire, but also be a doer, take action and create momentum. I mean, that's it. That's the secret sauce.
It is. And I think we have a partnership, Macy, right? We're business partners. Amanda, you and I have done some things in partnership. You do a lot of things in partnership. And I think that's one of the great things about partnership is coming together and each person bringing those skills, and kind of making that secret sauce move with the idea to move forward.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? You're balancing the dreaming and the doing. You've got to execute. You have to build trust. You have to bring credibility. You know, Missy, you just mentioned that we're business partners. We've been partners for many years. Amanda, you tend to partner with people. Also, I know you and Missy have done some things. Do you find that you like to partner with someone the same as you or opposite? Like if you would say, you know, Amanda, real quick, are you a dreamer or doer? And you would say doer. Do you think that you partner with people who are dreamers first and doers second, or do you partner for other reasons? Hey, bestie. We just got some amazing feedback from a client we recently worked with. Their team's morale and engagement skyrocketed after our training.
I love hearing that. Companies are seeing higher retention, lower turnover, and even increased revenue and productivity because leaders are investing in their teams.
And communication and team efficiency are improving, which we know leads to better customer service and huge cost savings. If you want these results, check out our website, Mpactful Messages, to learn how we can help you.
And for more leadership tips and strategies, sign up for our newsletter, mmleadershipnews.com.
That's a really thoughtful question because I think had I not been through some partnerships where I love somebody who's a big dreamer, but I've had some partnerships where people were really big dreamers, but they had no execution. And so then I felt like I was trying to execute and we were scratching the spider webs down every time we would start to make just a few little areas of traction, right? And then I've had other partnerships where it's been two of the same personalities, and that really also doesn't work. It's like having too many cooks in the kitchen to be perfect. So I've actually found that I need to have a little bit of both of those personalities in my life. And what I have found is that I typically need a little bit more of the dreamer, somebody who can amp me up and keep my vision going. Because when you are a doer, you can also be on the journey. And when the journey's journeying, it can also be really hard to see the dreams. So I do need that person who can be a little bit more of the dreamer equation. So I would kind of look at the dreamer doer instead of black or white. I would look at it like a scale, like
or a percentage, right? Yeah.
Or a percentage. Yeah. So I need somebody who probably gravitates more to the dreamer side because I I am a doer. And so I really like that person who can be almost an encourager for me. And then I think the opposite is true for them, right? That they need me to kind of create a little bit more of an action plan, an accountability plan. And, Missy, I think of our partnership because you're such a good dreamer. And what we did really well together is like, you reached out to me and you're like, I just need a little bit more of that action plan behind it. And that was kind of the fulfilling role. But then the back end side is that I was so in the midst of doing it that you really helped me remember the dream part, what it was about that we were working for, why we were doing that. And that partnership works really well for me. I think the other thing is, so I would say complementary is the way that I would look at that. And then I think that the underlying component to both of those is, unlike my former husband, who was the dreamer that had no doer in it, that comes down to a work ethic piece, right? That I think it would be really hard for me to be in a partnership with somebody who was, that's why it was a practice marriage. But, when you think about it, you have to be in a combined partnership with somebody who has a matching work ethic. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to have the same work schedule, the same work style, but they have to be willing to step to the plate to have the same work ethic. I think that is a partnership, or especially in entrepreneurship, a lot of people think, oh, we're great friends. And because we're great friends, we'll be great business partners. And sometimes that's the case. And many times it's not. Again, the two of you started in a business relationship and formed a great friendship. But I think sometimes if you're friends first and you don't know that work ethic, it can be a really treacherous slope.
I would agree with you.
Girls, this is such a great conversation. In my mind, the dreamer part of me is I'm like, okay, we need a word for somebody who's a dreamer and a doer. So like a drewer. How do y'all like that?
I can work on the marketing of that.
Okay, work on drewer. That maybe we can get that into the Urban Dictionary. And just so you know how my mind works, I'm also thinking of the song "Rainbow Connection."
Oh, I was thinking, what song is Missy thinking?
Oh yeah,
I knew that there was a song that was playing in the soundtrack of your life.
It was the Rainbow Connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. I think that on paper, all of this sounds easy, right? You execute the vision, but we know that people get stuck. Even if they're doers, it's easy to get stuck. So you have the vision and yet you don't execute. There are lots of reasons or excuses. But Amanda, do you have a personal example from your career where you had a vision, but something held you back from executing? And you may not because of the doer that you are.
Oh, I would say I do. Actually, I was kind of pondering as you were asking that question and just thinking about my own experience. And I think the listeners are probably doing the same, Missy, of thinking about their own experiences, because I think just because you're a doer doesn't mean that you still don't have hesitation in execution. And for me, this is hitting a little home, I think kind of close to home right now. So about 18 months ago, I launched a new skincare brand. And it was something that I've been in the skincare industry for a really long time. I love all things beauty and how it works and why it works and those components. And I've had for a long time, people were like, you should just have your own line. And I'm not an esthetician. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm not those things. So I think immediately what held me back from ever exploring that of execution is number one, imposter syndrome. That really did sneak in. But I would say for me, just in general, any time that I find myself struggling with execution, it doesn't matter. Even again, it could be training for a marathon. It could be my marriage. It could be leading my, marketing day job. It could be building my business. Is when I am in the mode of comparison, I struggle to execute.
That's so good.
Because I get so consumed by, and Macy, you said this earlier, like all the what ifs, like, well, what if this, and what if I do this, and what if that, and that, when I was launching my beauty brand is a product. It's one product. It's a nighttime powder, the gel treatment that you actually activate with water. It's weirdly wonderful, but there's nothing like it in a market. There's literally nothing like it in the market. And so because there's nothing like it in the market, nobody really knows what to do with it. It's very different. It's not a lotion, it's powder. People love it once they use it. But I was really like in the what if stage of like, well, what if I have this great idea and what if no one likes it? What if
Right.
they don't like my packaging? What if they don't like my brand? What if they don't like what I say? What if I don't look like this person? What if I don't ever sell my company to L'Oreal for $1.7 billion like Jamie
Jamie
Kern
Kern-Lima.
Lima?
Right.
Like, what if? And so I found myself like kind of like almost defeated before I started. And I was like, just go, like literally just go. And I
Right.
always appreciate my husband because he always says to me, he's like the master of the art of the possible. He's like, Amanda, you would live your whole life. And if you didn't do this, would you regret it?
Mm.
And I said, yes. And he said, if nobody ever buys it, who cares? Like you did it. You did the
Right.
thing.
So
You
good.
learned a ton along the way. And what I can tell you, thankfully, is like now, 18 months later, I still haven't sold my company for $1.7 billion. You know, I'm 18 months in. I still don't have 150,000 followers on Instagram. I haven't done any of things, but what I have done is I've had sales to almost every single one of the 50 states. What I have done is 70% of people who buy my product an additional 6 times and they
Wow.
consistently use it. Like that's what I care about. I
Yeah.
wanted to put something into the world and not everybody was going to love it. But comparison, I learned along the way, like comparison is an execution killer for me.
Mm.
This is so good. And we are so glad you brought that into the world. It's a great product. And one of the things I'm thinking as we're talking about dreamers, oftentimes, and Amanda, you are a great example of this, your dream is a bit of a side hustle for a while, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yep.
so people are busy, they've got a million things going on. So how do you prioritize execution when you're juggling multiple ideas or projects or jobs?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That is a good question. I would say if for those listeners who are readers out there, if you have not read the book, The Four Disciplines of Execution, it's a very boring book, but it's a really powerful book. I actually go back to it time and time again because it really is a book about prioritization. And, you know, just when I think about it, just to kind of give you the nutshell, we are all in a whirlwind. All of
Yeah.
us. We're all in a whirlwind. And in fact, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are good you're probably multitasking while you're doing it. You're curling your hair, you're driving your kids to school, maybe you're at the gym or on a walk or doing whatever. But I think we all live in this idea where we've got tons of ideas, tons of projects that we're working on. And what I loved, and I think just from a business perspective, when I read that book, The Four Disciplines of Execution, and they studied 1,500 companies. And what was crazy is that 100% of those company employees described their world as chaotic, frenzied,
Wow.
unorganized, and rushed. What's
Wow.
even more interesting, and I'm looking at some statistics here, is that only 15% of those employees in those 1,500 companies could tell this team one of the strategic priorities.
Wow.
Like pause for just a second and like let that resonate. The other interesting statistic, and this just stood out with me my whole life. Like I think of this when I think of prioritization. 49% of those employees, they had no intention or focus on even achieving that one priority if they could name it. So
Well,
think about
how
all
could
the
they achieve it
plans.
if they can't even name it?
Correct. So think about all the time that we spend planning and articulating and making 150,000 different priorities. And we want to grow our revenue and we want to improve our customer retention and we want to do all of these things. The net of this book, and the reason I share those statistics with you is because it just resonated with me, the doer who likes to spin multiple plates at one time, is that you have to focus on the wildly important goal.
Hmm.
What is the wildly important goal? Like this year, Missy, like what's the one thing that if you did in Impactful Messages would be incredible for your business? What's the one thing you could do for your fitness this year that would be incredible and change your physical fitness journey?
I love
Whatever
that.
that
I
is.
think that's such a great question for our listeners to like get out your pen, right?
Yes.
Get out
What's
your
the
pen
one
and
thing?
write that down. What's the one thing? Because there probably are a lot of people who are listening, whether they're dreamers or doers, that have all these ideas, right? The dreamers are dreaming up the ideas. The doers are spinning all the plates. And then has anyone stopped to say, well, what's just the one thing? And with that, I have a question, Amanda, that can kind of help our listeners, like as they're thinking and as they're dreaming big, or maybe they need help to think of, okay, what is that one thing? What is an actionable step? That's a very practical step that someone can take right now, today, this afternoon, to take this big picture idea that they have and put it into action. What would you
That is a
recommend for
great
someone?
question, Macy DelValle.
Thank you, Missy Washam.
It is a great question. That's going to that what they could do would be depending on what they're trying to do. So I think, when I think about action for me, I literally will sit at my desk, and just another plug if you're looking for productivity of how to do that. I use a planning tool it's a company called Ink and Bolt, and it's literally a productivity planner, and it's a dashboard. And what it does is it prioritizes your week by big buckets. So you can have no more than 3 big buckets that you're trying to work on for the week, period, end of story. And then what you do is underneath whatever those big buckets are, you put the top 3 things that have to happen for that to make you feel like your week was accomplished. So for example, we'll just use Kickpeach Beauty this week. There's some things that I'm working on in our business, and there's 3 things that have to happen this week because those three things drive the wildly important goal. So whatever your wildly important goal is, what are the 3 things that if you did those this week would get you closer to whatever that goal is? Again, if that's a fitness goal, if that's a leadership goal, if that's a communication goal, is it you need to take a class? Is it that you need to register for the class? Is it that you need to get the book? Whatever that is, I have found that every single day when I sit down and I look at my calendar and I'm like, I have a million things in the whirlwind going on.
Yeah.
What are the 3 most important things that I need to do that get me, not everybody else, to the wildly important goal that I'm trying to achieve that day?
I love it.
That is so good. You are dropping gold. I mean,
Well,
people
we knew she would.
I know. That's why I was so excited. So, Amanda, you're talking about prioritizing and setting those goals and getting it done. But oftentimes when we're working toward a dream and it's easy to lose steam or even excitement because once
Yeah.
the work's begun, you're in work mode. So how do you keep that excitement going?
I think consistency, those 3 things, you just keeping consistency. And I have long said this, Missy, I've talked to multiple audiences about just consistency. Consistency is not sexy. Consistency is not sexy.
No, it's
not.
boring.
It's
Right.
boring. And I was recently listening to another podcast. If you haven't ever listened to the Diary of the CEO podcast, it's an excellent podcast. And he had a gentleman by the name of Daniel Priestley on. And Daniel Priestley was talking about just this momentum and how do you create momentum. And he uses some more colorful language that I won't use. But one of the things he said is, how many times do you think Adele has sang the song Hello?
Right.
Yeah.
Literally thousands. How many times do you think she sang hello before hello was hello? Probably even more than thousands of times.
Yes.
And yet as leaders and entrepreneurs, I think when we are finding ourselves on the side of momentum, we don't pause to give notice to the baseline fundamentals because we don't have to, right? It kind of makes things, we can get a little lazy in that time frame because just things are working. And so we don't stop to operationalize or process or create routine. And then when all of a sudden that momentum fades, and it's not if it will fade, it's when
It's
it
a
will
when,
fade.
of course.
Yeah. You don't have any idea what got you there. And so because you have no idea what got you there, you're trying to now go back and find a silver bullet that's going to fix and get you back from not momentum to momentum. And if you would just go back to doing the baseline fundamentals that put you into momentum, they're not sexy. You're singing hello again at your Las Vegas thing. And you're like, yep, great. Everybody's going to sing in the audience, but I got to sing it. you're going to do it over and over and over and over and over. And I think the sooner leaders and entrepreneurs and just humans realize there's actually something really incredibly satisfying about creating discipline in your daily routine. Like there's just something wildly satisfying about it. Because again, Adele probably she's probably not fired up to seeing Hello again 10 years later, but guess what she's probably really excited about? Every time Hello plays and she gets a royalty
That's
check.
right. That's right.
I have two things to say here. One, you could tell Amanda's a lot younger than we are, Missy, because if we were going to say hello, we would have probably said Hello by Lionel Richie,
yes.
not Adele. So that
I do
right
love
there.
that song.
Oh,
Yes.
I do too. But if I'm thinking hello, Lionel Richie comes to mind a lot faster.
Yes.
But what I think it also comes back to, Amanda, with the consistency and doing the same thing, like if you have to remember your why, like why did you do this in the first place? Like when you've lost momentum, I think it's time to take pause and say, okay, why did I have this vision? Like where did I want to go? And I think that could kind of bring you back and, get that momentum.
Like what was that dream? Right.
Yeah.
You have to go back.
Or why,
there.
but not even what was the dream. Why did I have the dream? What was I hoping the dream was going to lead me to or get me to? Right. Like for you with the Kickpeach, Amanda, like your dream was to get this easy face care in the hands of women across the globe. It's easy. It's low cost. It's for travel. There's nothing better. I mean, you don't ever have to get worried about being pulled over by TSA because there's
no water.
It's a powder.
It's not going to spill.
I mean, there's no water. Right. Yeah.
And so I'm going to add on top of that. I think you've got to have fun along the way, right? I think people forget to have fun in the journey. Yeah. Yep. It's okay to have fun at work. It's okay to have fun as you're working on your dream. And if you combine, what you said, remember the why and have fun and stay consistent, I think you can be unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that this is a great segue into today's takeaway. So if you only take one thing away from today's episode, let it be this. The difference between dreaming and achieving lies in the doing. A vision may spark the dream, but it's the execution, whether it's imperfect or messy and consistent, that is what turns dreams into reality. And leaders don't wait for perfect moments.
That's right.
They create momentum by taking the first step, no matter how small it is.
Oh, I love that so much. Like they take momentum by taking that first step, no matter how small. So whether you're leading a team at work, running your household, building a dream as an entrepreneur, or simply leading yourself through a challenging season, this week's topic is for you. It's about stepping up, about taking action and moving those dreams out of your head and into the world. And Amanda, thank you for joining us today on our little podcast world.
Yes, thank
if our
you.
listeners wanted to stay connected with you or get some Kickpeach Beauty or get some more book recommendations or anything else that you're up to, how can they get in touch with you, follow you, etc.?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is in our world of digital media and social media. So you can find me at unapologetically_Amanda on Instagram. If you want to follow me, my dog, my coastal living life, it's a good time. If you really like skincare and you want to talk skincare or business, it's easiest to follow me at Kickpeach.
Well, and we will put all of that.
Notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes as well. So Amanda, as we wrap up today, what is your favorite leadership quote?
That's so tough because I go back to a shared friend of ours, John Maxwell, and I love the quote, leadership is influence. It doesn't have anything really to do with our conversation today, but it kind of does when I think about execution and where we're going. But, leadership is influence. It's just something that I always think about. You can influence the outcome and the way you show up for something. If something's really bad, if you influence the behaviors that you want to see in your organization and yourself, it's so critical. And I think that's the quote that I always kind of default to in my life is that in every opportunity I have an opportunity to be an influence for good or bad.
Well,
Yeah,
you've been a great influence today and in my life. I love you. And for our listeners, do you have a favorite leadership quote? Let us know that too, and we may spotlight it on a future episode.
We'll be back next week with another quote and more leadership insights. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to talk
about it.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye, Amanda.
Bestie.
Thank you.
Bye, Amanda. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this show, please show us some love by clicking the 3 dots to download the podcast, leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast app, and talk about it with other leaders to help them find the show from any of the major podcast apps. We'd love for you to follow us on social media too. Mpactful with an M _ messages on Instagram and Mpactful Messages on LinkedIn.